ring, the rattle of chains begins, moonlight streaming into the turreted room's windows. Oh dear Lord, Roderrick is loose. Who do you think you are? Coming up with changes, trying to rearrange things. Who do you think you are? Your cold detached sobriety comes to pierce illusion's reverie. Can't you see that you're not wanted? Who do you think you are? You gatecrash situations, looking for confrontation. Who do you think you are? Just an uninvited stranger, not allowed to table, but you try. Like in Poe's Raven, with boon or craven, I'd like nothing more than you darken my doorstep, nevermore. We are lost, we are found, we are fearless and all around. We are scared of ourselves with a mirror that's our fate. We are lost, we are lost, we are found.
Good evening and welcome to the Halfway to Halloween Edgar Allan Poe Extravaganza. Have we got a great show lined up for you? Not only are we celebrating the halfway mark to Halloween with some incredible tales and poems by Edgar Allan Poe, but we're also celebrating the new release from the band The Dead Speak and the new album entitled For the Sinners and the Strays. And we will have links below for you to click on and purchase the album or listen to it at your own free will. Remember, I had nothing to do to influence you into purchasing this album, so buy it. Listen to it at your own free will. But moving on, we have got a great show lined up for you. Some incredible stories by Edgar Allan Poe, and of course some of his poetry set to music. Very interesting take on this. And first up, we have got Charles to sing the song Annabelle Lee. So we've got a great show. You won't want to miss it, so grab your favorite corpse and a pint of blood. Sit back and enjoy Halfway to Halloween Edgar Allan Poe Extravaganza.
many a year ago in the kingdom by the sea, that a maiden that lived whom you may know by the name of Annabelle. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle, with a love that the winged seraph of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of the cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle, so that her high-born kinsmen came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea, my beautiful Annabelle. My beautiful Up to the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle. And the stars never rise, but I see the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle. And so all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my pride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. My beautiful Annabelle, my
thank you, Charles. An incredible performance. Wonderful take on the poem, and it's quite enjoyable. Well done, my friend. Well done. Up next, we've got The Dreadful Tale of Berenice.
Misery is manifold, the wretchedness of earth is multiform. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, its hues are as various as the hues of that arch, as distinct too, yet as intimately blended. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow. How is it that from beauty I have derived a type of unloveliness? From the covenant of peace a simile of sorrow? But as in ethics evil is a consequence of good, so in fact out of joy is sorrow born. Either the memory of the past bliss is the anguish of today, or the agonies which have their origin in the ecstasies which might have been. My baptismal name is Aegeus. That of my family I will not mention. Yet there are no towers in the land more time-honoured than my gloomy grey hereditary halls. Our line has been called a race of visionaries, and in many striking particulars. In the character of the family mansion, in the frescoes of the chief saloon, in the tapestries of the dormitories, in the chiselling of some buttresses in the armoury, but more especially in the gallery of antique paintings, in the fashion of the library chamber, and lastly in the very peculiar nature of the library's contents, there is more than sufficient evidence to warrant the belief. The recollections of my earliest years are connected with that chamber and with its volumes, of which the latter I will say no more. Here died my mother, herein was I born. But it is mere idleness to say that I had not lived before, that the soul has no previous existence. You deny it? Let us not argue the matter. Convince myself I seek not to convince. There is, however, a remembrance of aerial forms, of spiritual and meaning eyes, of sounds musical yet sad, a remembrance which will not be excluded, a memory like a shadow, vague, variable, indefinite, unsteady, and like a shadow too, in the impossibility of my getting rid of it while the sunlight of my reason shall exist. In that chamber was I born, thus awaking from the long night of what seemed, but was not, non-entity, at once into the very regions of fairyland, into a palace of imagination, into the wild dominions of monastic thought and erudition. It is not singular that I gazed around me with a startled and ardent eye, that I loitered away my boyhood in books and dissipated my youth in reverie. But it is singular that as years rolled away and the noon of manhood found me still in the mansion of my fathers, it is wonderful what stagnation there fell upon the springs of my life. Wonderful how total an inversion took place in the character of my commonest thought. The realities of the world affected me as visions, and as visions only, while the wild ideas of the land of dreams became, in turn, not the material of my everyday existence, but in very deed that existence utterly and solely in itself. Berenice and I were cousins, and we grew up together in my paternal halls. Yet differently we grew, I ill of health and buried in gloom, she agile, graceful, and overflowing with energy. Hers the ramble on the hillside, mine the studies of the cloister. I living within my own heart, and addicted body and soul to the most intense and painful meditation. She roaming carelessly through life with no thought of the shadows in her path, or the silent flight of the raven-winged hours. Berenice! I call upon her name. Berenice! And from the grey ruins of memory, 1,000 tumultuous recollections are startled at the sound. Ah! Vividly is her image before me now, as in the early days of her light-heartedness and joy. Oh, gorgeous yet fantastic beauty! Oh, sylph amid the shrubberies of Arnheim! Oh, naiad among its fountains! And then all is mystery and terror, and a tale which should not be told. Disease, a fatal disease, fell like the simoom upon her frame, and even while I gazed upon her, the spirit of change swept over her, pervading her mind, her habits, and her character, and in a manner the most subtle and terrible, disturbing even the identity of her person. Alas, the destroyer came and went, and the victim, where was she? I knew her not, or knew her no longer as Berenice. Among the numerous train of maladies superinduced by that fatal and primary one which effected a revolution of so horrible a kind in the moral and physical being of my cousin, may be mentioned as the most distressing and obstinate in its nature. A species of epilepsy not unfrequently terminating in trance itself, trance very nearly resembling positive dissolution, and from which a manner of recovery was in most instances startlingly abrupt. In the meantime, my own disease, for I have been told I should call it by no other appellation. My own disease, then, grew rapidly upon me, and assumed finally a monomaniac character of a novel and extraordinary form, hourly and momentally gaining vigour, and at length obtaining over me the most incomprehensible ascendancy. This monomania, if I must so term it, consisted in a morbid irritability of those properties of the mind and metaphysical science termed the attentive. It is more than probable that I am not understood, but I fear indeed that it is in no manner possible to convey to the mind of the merely general reader an adequate idea of that nervous intensity of interest with which, in my case, the powers of meditation, not to speak technically, busied and buried themselves in the contemplation of even the most ordinary objects of the universe. To muse for long and wearied hours with my attention riveted to some frivolous device on the margin, or in the topography of a book, to become absorbed for the better part of a summer's day in a quaint shadow falling aslant in the tapestry or upon the door, to lose myself for an entire night in watching the steady flame of a lamp or the embers of a fire, to dream away the whole days over the perfume of a flower, to repeat monotonously some common word until the sound, by dint of frequent repetition, ceased to convey any idea whatever to the mind, to lose all sense of motion or physical existence, by means of absolute bodily quiescence, long and obstinately persevered within. Such were a few of the most common and least pernicious vagaries, induced by a condition of mental faculties, not indeed altogether unparalleled, but certainly bidding defiance to anything like analysis or explanation. True to its own character, my disorder revelled in the less important but more startling changes wrought in the physical frame of Berenice, in the singular and most appalling distortion of her personal identity. During the brightest days of her unparalleled beauty, most surely I had never loved her. In the strange anomaly of my existence, feelings with me had never been of the heart, and my passions always were of the mind. Through the grey of the early morning, among the trellised shadows of the forest at noonday, and in the silence of my library at night, she had flitted by my eyes, and I had seen her, not as the living and breathing Berenice, but as the Berenice of a dream. Not as being of the earth, earthy, but as the abstraction of such a being, not as a thing to admire but to analyze, not as an object of love, but as a theme of the most abstruse although desultory speculation. And now I shuddered in her presence, and grew pale at her approach, yet bitterly lamenting her fallen and desolate condition. I called to mind that she had loved me long, and in an evil moment I spoke to her of marriage. And at length the period of our nuptials was approaching, when upon an afternoon in the winter of the year, one of those unseasonably warm, calm, and misty days which are the nurse of the beautiful halcyon, I sat as I thought alone, in the inner apartment of the library, but uplifting my eyes I saw that Berenice stood before me. Was it my own excited imagination, or the misty influence of the atmosphere, or the uncertain twilight of the chamber, or the grey draperies which fell around her figure, that caused in it so vacillating and indistinct an outline? I could not tell. She spoke no word. I, not for worlds, could have uttered a syllable. An icy chill ran through my frame, a sense of insufferable anxiety oppressed me, a consuming curiosity pervaded my soul, and sinking back upon the chair, I remained for some time breathless and motionless, with my eyes riveted upon her person. Alas, its emaciation was excessive, and not one vestige of the former being lurked in any single line of the contour. My burning glances at length fell upon the face. The forehead was high and very pale, and singularly placid, and the once jetty hair fell partially over it, and overshadowed the hollow temples with innumerable ringlets, now of a vivid yellow, and jarring discordantly on their fantastic character with the reigning melancholy of her countenance. The eyes were lifeless and lustreless, and seemingly pupilless, and I shrank involuntarily from their glassy stare to the contemplation of the thin and shrunken lips. They parted in a smile of peculiar meaning. The teeth of the changed Berenice disclosed themselves slowly to my view. Would to God that I had never beheld them, or that having done so, I had died. The shutting of a door disturbed me, and, looking up, I found that my cousin had departed from the chamber. But from the disordered chamber of my brain had not, alas, departed, and would not be driven away, the white and ghastly spectrum of the teeth. Not a speck on their surface, not a shade on their enamel, not an indenture on their edges, but what that period of her smile had sufficed to brand in upon my memory. I saw them now even more unequivocally than I beheld them then. The teeth! The teeth! They were here and there and everywhere, and visibly and palpably before me, long, narrow, and excessively white, with the pale lips writhing about them, as in the very moment of their first terrible development. Then came the full fury of my monomania, and I struggled in vain against its strange and irresistible influence. In the multiplied objects of the external world I had no thoughts but for the teeth. For these I longed with a frenzied desire. All other matters and all other different interests became absorbed in the single contemplation. They alone were present to the mental eye, and they in their sole individuality became the essence of my mental life. I held them in every light. I turned them in every attitude. I surveyed their characteristics. I mused upon the alteration in their nature. I shuddered as I assigned to them an imagination as sensitive and sentient power, and even when unassisted by the lips, capability of moral expression. Of Mademoiselle Salle it has been well said, que tous ses pas étaient des sentiments, and of Berenice I more seriously believed, que tous ses dons étaient des idées. Des idées! Ah, here was the idiotic thought that destroyed me. Des idées! And therefore it was that I coveted them so madly. I felt that their possession could alone ever restore me to peace, in giving me back to reason. And the evening closed in upon me thus, and then the darkness came, and tarried and went, and the day again dawned, and the mists of a second night were now gathering around. And still I sat motionless in that solitary room, and still I sat buried in meditation. And still the phantasma of the teeth maintained its terrible ascendancy, as with the most vivid, hideous distinctness, it floated about amid the changing lights and shadows of the chamber. At length there broke in upon my dreams a cry as of horror and dismay, and thereunto, after a pause, succeeded the sound of troubled voices, intermingled with many low moanings of sorrow or of pain. I arose from my seat, and throwing open one of the doors of the library, saw standing out in the antechamber a servant maiden, all in tears, who told me that Berenice was no more. She had been seized with epilepsy in the early morning, and now, at the closing in of the night, the grave was ready for its tenant, and all the preparations for the burial were completed. I found myself sitting in the library, and again sitting there alone. It seemed that I had newly awakened from a confused and exciting dream. I knew that it now was midnight, and I was well aware that since the setting of the sun, Berenice had been interred. But of that dreary period which intervened I had no positive, at least no definite comprehension. Yet its memory was replete with horror, horror more horrible from being vague, and terror more terrible from ambiguity. It was a fearful page in the record of my existence, written all over with dim and hideous and unintelligible recollections. I strive to decipher them, but in vain, while ever and anon, like the spirit of a departed sound, the shrill and piercing shriek of a female voice seemed to be ringing in my ears. I had done a deed. What was it? I asked myself the question aloud, and the whispering echoes of the chamber answered me. What was it? On the table beside me burned a lamp, and near it lay a little box. It was of no remarkable character, and I had seen it frequently before, for it was the property of the family physician. But how it came in there, upon my table, and why did I shudder in regarding it? These things were in no manner to be accounted for, and my eyes at length dropped to the open pages of a book, and to a sentence underscored therein. The words were the singular but simple ones of the poet Ibn Ziyad. Dicebant mehe sodales se sepulchrum emaque visitarem, curas meas eloquentalum for levitas. Why then, as I perused them, did the hairs of my head erect themselves on end, and the blood of my body become congealed within my veins? There came a light tap at the library door, and pale as the tenant of a tomb, a menial entered upon tiptoe. His looks were wild with terror, and he spoke to me in a voice tremulous, husky, and very low. What said he? Some broken sentences I heard. He told of a wild cry disturbing the silence of the night, of the gathering together of the household, of search in the direction of the sound. And then his tones grew thrillingly distinct, as he whispered me of a violated grave, of a disfigured body, enshrouded, yet still breathing, still palpitating, still alive. He pointed to garments. They were muddy and clotted with gore. I spoke not, and he took me gently by the hand. It was indented with the impress of human nails. He directed my attention to some object against the wall. I looked at it for some minutes. It was a spade. With a shriek I bounded to the table, and grasped the box that laid upon it. But I could not force it open, and in my tremor it slipped from my hands and fell heavily, and burst into pieces, and from it with a rattling sound there rolled out some instruments of dental surgery, intermingled with 32 small white and ivory-looking substances that were scattered to and fro about the floor.
Oh, was that a frightful tale or what? I love that story. I love it. Now, speaking of cemeteries, up next we've got the song by the Dead Speak entitled Cemetery. So let's give it up for the Dead Speak.
Feet on the dashboard, flying down 95. Car full of devils and we're just killing time. So pass that ball around so we can keep in the lines. My friends and I, we'd rather die than live a life confined. Do you ever see a future in a cemetery? Falling 6 feet short from having the time of your life. Does it hurt to breathe in the casket you were buried? Part in a coffin for an eternal night. Do you ever see a future in a cemetery?
Oh, was that amazing or what? What a fun song. What a fun song. Thank you for the Dead Speak for performing that for us. Up next, we've got a wonderful story, and I believe some may have recalled it as possibly the only story of Poe's with a happy ending. You be the judge. Up next, we have the tale Eleonora. So enjoy. Eleanor was the name of my cousin. We had always dwelled together in the valley of the many-colored grass. Hand in hand about this valley for 15 years roamed I with Eleanor before love entered within our hearts. The loveliness of Eleanor was that of the seraphim, but she was a maiden artless and innocent as the brief life she had led. One day, in tears of the last sad change which must befall humanity, she had seen that the finger of death was upon her bosom, that, like the ephemeron, she had been made perfect in loveliness only to die. But the terrors of the grave to her lay solely in a consideration which she revealed to me one evening at twilight. Then and there I threw myself hurriedly at the feet of Eleanor and offered up a vow to herself and to heaven that I would never bind myself in marriage to any daughter of earth, and I would in no manner prove recreant to her dear memory, or to the memory of the devout affection with which she had blessed me. And I called the mighty ruler of the universe to witness the pious solemnity of my vow. And she said to me not many days afterwards, tranquilly dying, that because of what I had done for the comfort of her spirit, that she would watch over me in that spirit when departed, and if so it were permitted to her, return to me visibly in the watches of the night. But if this thing were indeed beyond the power of the souls in paradise, that she would at least give me frequent indications of her presence, sighing upon me in the evening winds, or filling the air which I breathed with the perfume of the censers of the angels. And with these words upon her lips, she yielded up her innocent life, as death cast its long shadow over her. Years dragged themselves along heavily as I dwelt alone in my chamber amongst the gloom and melancholy, but the void within my heart refused even thus to be filled. I longed for the love which had before filled it to overflowing. At length the valley in which our love bloomed pained me through its memories of Eleonora, and I left it forever for the vanities and the turbulent triumphs of the world. I found myself within a strange city, where all things might have served to blot from recollection the sweet dreams I had dreamed so long in the valley of the many-colored grass. My soul had proven true to its vows, and the indications of the presence of Eleanor were still given to me in the silent hours of the night. Then suddenly these manifestations ceased, and the world grew dark before mine eyes. One bleak evening there came through my window the soft sighs which had forsaken me, and they modeled themselves into a familiar shape and form. "Eleonora!" cried I. She then spoke in her sweet, gentle voice. "Thou art absolved from thy vows. You are free, for reasons which shall be made known to thee in heaven." And with a kiss she dissipated upon a cool breeze, and I stood there in silence, and felt the heavy cloak of my despair being lifted from my form, and I heard no more from my beloved Eleonora. Oh, what a heartwarming tale, isn't it not? Oh, it just brings tears to the eyes, yes. Brings tears to the eyes. Now, we've got another special guest for us. We've got William Westwater from Fear Incorporated and other bands fame. Also our cohort in crime here. He will be reciting the wonderful poem, The Conqueror Worm. So let's give it up for William.
Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight, in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Minds in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither they do fly, mere puppets who come and go, at bidding of vast and formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings, oh invisible woe! That motley drama, oh be sure, it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chase forevermore, by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth, into the self-same spot, and much of madness and more of sin, and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rises from out the scenic solitude. It writhes with mortal pangs, the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out are the lights out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain of funeral pall comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero the conqueror worm.
Oh, what a wonderful recital. Thank you, William, for a wonderful job. And I tell you, that poem really gives you a lot to think about. What can I say? It's a tough one to swallow, you know what I'm saying? But, anyways, moving on. We've got another wonderful story, entitled The Oblong Box.
Begins aboard the sailing ship Independence in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina in June of 1897. William Hopkins, an attorney of some importance, and his wife, Elvira, are standing by the ship's rail near the gangplank, watching the arrival of passengers with more than ordinary interest.
Well, it's close on departure time. Are you sure Cornelius Wyatt and his bride will be aboard?
Oh, it says so in the Charleston Herald yesterday, and I checked the passenger list, which plainly states Mr. and Mrs. Cornelius Wyatt, cabin C and D.
Do you think he'll remember you?
Oh, my dear Elvira, we were the closest of friends. And there, by heaven, there he comes.
Where?
The carriage that just came onto the dock. The man in it is Wyatt, and the woman at his side must be his lovely new bride, Rachel.
But what in the world is in that wagon behind him? Will, it's a coffin.
No, Elvira, no. That oblong box doesn't contain a corpse. It contains a priceless painting, a copy of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper.
How do you know all this?
The newspapers. There were several stories about Wyatt buying the painting and having it carefully boxed for the voyage to New York. Wyatt and his bride are coming up the gangplank. I can't wait to see his face when he discovers his old friend Will Hopkins.
All right. Handle that box with care, will you? You hear me? With care.
Oh, I'm anxious to see the face of his bride. That's a pretty heavy veil she's wearing.
She's beautiful. Absolutely ravishing.
Why, Will, you've met her. You know her.
No, but I know Cornelius Wyatt. He could never stand an ugly woman, not even a plain one.
Incompetent idiots. I'll speak to Captain Hardy about this. And you, sir, where can I find Captain Hardy?
I'm afraid I don't know, Cornelius.
Cornelius? You address me with a familiarity, sir, that I don't... Well, hold a moment. You're...
Will Hopkins. Your old college friend, Will Hopkins.
Oh, yes, so you are.
Well, you certainly don't seem very happy to see me again after all these years.
No, most happy. Great pleasure, but I'm a bit upset at the moment. Good Lord, sir, what are you brainless sailors doing with that box? Damn it! I said keep it on an even keel and right side up.
Oh, come now, Wyatt. There's no damage done, and certainly a few bumps won't harm the painting if you pack it securely, that is.
The painting?
The copy of Da Vinci's Last Supper. You bought your bride as a wedding gift. It is what's in the box, isn't it? It's certainly not a corpse, Wyatt.
No, of course not.
Oh, good heavens, I forgot my manners. My wife, Elvira. Dear, this is my old friend, Cornelius Wyatt.
How do you do?
How do you do? My wife, Rachel.
How do you do?
And now, you'll excuse us, I'm sure. We've got to go at once to our cabin.
No, but wait now, Wyatt. Wait a moment. Surely we're going to have the pleasure of seeing your bride. I mean, won't she raise her veil so we can look at this beauty you've married?
Why, Rachel, my dear, will your veil... Not the beauty you expected, Hopkins?
Well, no, that is, yes, most attractive. You are indeed most attractive, Mrs. Wyatt, or Rachel, if I may.
Oh, of course you may.
And now you must excuse us. Care of that.
Well, it's right. She's ugly.
Certainly not beautiful. Will?
Yes?
Don't you sense something peculiar about all this? Will?
Something wrong, Elvira?
The oblong box, it's in their cabin.
In the same cabin the Wyatts occupy?
Yes.
How do you know? Seems to me Wyatt's gone out of his way to keep their door closed at all times.
Well, just as I was coming down from my stroll on deck, their door opened and I saw Rachel go into the other cabin. And before Mr. Wyatt could close the door, I saw it. The box.
But that makes no sense. These cabins are anything but spacious. In fact, they're downright tiny. Well, this is the damnedest thing I've ever heard. Well, it's idiocy, unless...
Yes?
That must be it. The painting is so valuable. In fact, Elvira, it's beyond price. Wyatt wouldn't even run the risk of letting it out of his sight, which reminds me, what do you say we have a look at it? Come along.
What is it?
Your old friend, Will Hopkins, Wyatt.
What do you want?
Well,
I would ask you and your wife in, but as you can see, there's scarcely room to move about because of the box.
Oh, that's what we came about, Mr. Wyatt.
Meaning what, Mrs. Hopkins?
Why, Will thought you wouldn't mind if we had a look at the painting.
Oh, I see.
And can we?
No, I'm sorry. It's out of the question. You see, I had to adopt extreme precautions in creating it, especially to guard against the dampness of a 6-day voyage to New York. The box is sealed.
Sealed? You don't say.
With melted wax. Believe me, I'd be more than glad to show you the painting, old friend, but it simply can't be done.
Oh, I understand. I'm sorry, Elvira, that we couldn't, What's wrong?
Strange. Very strange.
Oh, now, will you stop? There's nothing strange about not wanting to open a box he's gone to infinite pains to seal with melted wax.
But it isn't sealed with melted wax or anything else.
What do you mean?
You didn't smell it?
Well, now you mention it, there was an odor of some sort.
Yes, an odor of some sort. Come to bed, Will. It's 11 o'clock.
No, Elvira. I thought I might take a stroll on deck before turning in.
Oh, no. Do you think that's wise? There's a gale blowing.
What?
Will? But what is it?
Well, this is the damnedest thing. The damnedest thing.
What? Will Hopkins, if you don't tell me what you...
Rachel Wyatt. She just came out of their cabin, looked up and down the passage to be sure she wasn't seen, and then, Elvira, she went into the cabin where they keep the luggage.
Well, maybe she needs something out of it.
Shh, listen.
What is that?
It's coming from the Wyatt cabin, and it sounds to me as if Wyatt's prying off the lid of that oblong box.
You're right. That's exactly what it sounds like. Exactly what it was.
Then it couldn't have been sealed.
I told you that.
But why would he lie? Especially to an old friend.
Well, you are naive. Cornelius Wyatt no longer considers you an old friend or even a friend. He doesn't want anything to do with you. As for why he lied because he doesn't want you or me or anyone else to know what's in that box. What's really in that box.
Shh, listen.
What's that? What's he saying?
He's crying.
Yes, I can hear him. Poor man. Will, what is he crying over?
It can't be the painting, even if it had been damaged when those sailors bumped the box.
Box my foot, it's a coffin.
Elvira, I'm going over there. Wyatt? Wyatt, it's me, Will Hopkins. Open up. Wyatt, do you hear me? Let's go in, Elvira.
Will, the cabin's empty.
And so is the box. Neither a painting nor a corpse. Wyatt's in trouble, Elvira. Serious trouble.
But there's nothing in the box, so why do you think he's in trouble?
Because there was something in it, and whatever he was sobbing over was in this oblong box, and it isn't here now. Where is it? Now, come on, let's see if we can find him.
Will. Well, there he is, standing at the rail, gazing off across the water.
There's someone with him, a woman, standing beside him.
One of the passengers.
Maybe, only if it is, I've never seen her before.
Will, I have never seen anyone so beautiful. She's ravishing.
She's that, all right. Absolutely lovely face. That long blonde hair blowing in the breeze. No wonder he was holding her close to him. Arm around her waist and... Oh, hey, look. Kissing her now.
Well, oh, good Lord.
Elvira?
I think I'm going to faint. Take me below to our cabin.
Yes, but what is it?
A terrible thought, a horrible thought, horrible.
What horrible thought?
Thought that whoever she is, or whatever she is, Will, she must have been in that box.
Sit down, Mr. Hopkins, sit down.
Thank you, Captain.
Mr. Hopkins, as you know, we've had nothing but bad weather and bad luck since leaving Charleston Harbor 3 days ago.
I guess all your passengers are aware of that, Captain.
It's getting worse. Even worse, the repair to the foremast isn't holding. And if the foremast goes, we'll be in serious trouble. There's a force 6 gale out there right now, Mr. Hopkins. And it's whipping up.
But, Captain, why are you telling me all this? What can I do?
Well, you can tell me something that I need to know. What is Mr. Wyatt carrying in that oblong box?
Why, a copy, a priceless copy of The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci.
Have you seen it?
No.
Well, the crew are beginning to think that it contains a body. A corpse. And that because of it, this ship is jinxed.
Not his wife? You're telling me that the woman in that cabin across the passage, the woman Wyatt introduced as his wife, is not?
I don't think so, Will. The little chat I deliberately had with her because, quite frankly, Will, my suspicions had been aroused.
Aroused by what?
For one thing, Will, you said Mr. Wyatt was interested only in the most beautiful of women. And Rachel Wyatt is altogether plain.
She's downright ugly, but that's no reason to suspect.
Also, when I was talking to her, she slipped and called me Mum.
Mum? Only a servant uses that word.
Exactly. Will, what was that?
If you ask me, Captain Hardy's worst fears have been realized. The foremast is broken.
Will, that bell. Will, isn't that the signal for the boat station?
God help us, it is.
Oh, Will, what's going to happen to us? What are we going to do?
Head for our boat station, that's what. Come on.
Oh, wait, with my jewelry.
The hell with the jewelry, woman. Come on. Wyatt.
Yes?
Wyatt, the ship's in danger. It may be foundering. That bell you hear, it's a call to all boat stations.
Oh.
Wyatt, stop staring at a corpse.
Corpse?
The corpse, the body of your wife, your dead wife.
She's not dead, Hopkins. That's what they said, the doctors, but they were wrong. Only sleeping, she's only sleeping, Hopkins. And soon she'll wake up very soon now.
Wyatt.
Isn't she beautiful? Rachel, dear, can you hear me?
Wyatt, what are you doing?
Come, darling, time to wake up. Sweetheart.
In heaven's name, man, she's dead.
Rachel.
Dead, do you hear me?
I can't wake her. Deep asleep, in a deep sleep, Hopkins. And help me.
How?
Lend a hand. I've got to get her on deck into a lifeboat, please.
She's dead.
There. She's sitting up.
Oh. Good Lord.
Now, we'll just... Hopkins, if you'll only just please help me to get her out of this box.
Quiet, come to your senses.
There. She's on her feet.
Oh, my Lord.
In a deep sleep. But that's all right. I'll walk her. We'll walk her up to the boat. Get your arm around her, Hopkins, on the other side.
No.
Hopkins, I can do this alone, but it would help if you...
No.
Damn it, Hopkins! Will you please? No!
Well, a lifeboat isn't expected to be the most comfortable place in the world.
She's going down, I think. The ship getting lower in the water. Captain, is she?
Yes. Foundering.
Look! Oh, he brought a corpse on deck. Look, he's propping it against the rail, his arm around it. Oh, he's kissing it.
Who would take a corpse on deck? Who would make love to a corpse?
Will, how gruesome.
Beautiful. Beautiful, though.
Beautiful? How can you say that?
Because to him, she's still alive. And if there is a life after death, she must know that few men have ever loved a woman as he loves her.
She's going now. My ship.
And they with her. Please, God, be with them. Please.
Welcome back. What a wonderful adaptation to that story. Quite fun and enjoyable. Quite fun indeed. Speaking of sinking ships, the Dead Speak return with the track entitled Rats. So let's give it up for the Dead Speak.
Step right up if you wanna go for a ride. I can guarantee you'll have a hell of a time. And I can't say where we're going, but just know it's south of here. The ship's for souls that wanna disappear. We're rats on a sinking ship.
Boy, I tell you, another fun song. I tell you, this new album they have is incredible. It's very well produced, great catchy songs. It's a lot of fun. You guys really, really got to check it out. You really got to check it out. But moving on, we've got up next Lord Sandwich, and he will be reciting the poem The Raven to music. It's quite entertaining, and it's a good one. So sit back and enjoy, and let's give it up for Lord Sandwich.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten law, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly had I sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for that rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently came your rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, something louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Oh, thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art shorn of craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." "Oh, a raven, nevermore." But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yours, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yours meant in croaking nevermore. Thus I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl, whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight floated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight floating o'er she shall press for nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent her thee. By these angels he hath sent thee respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh, quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Eden it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word a sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked up starting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. On the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
What a wonderful job, wonderful job. Well done, my friend, well done. Let's give it up for Lord Sandwich for an incredible job on that. Very dramatic, very dramatic. Yes, but moving on. Our next tale, we've actually told this tale before a couple of years ago, but since we figured this is all Poe tonight, we might as well throw it back in there for, well, no one ever actually asked for it to see it again. But in case there was one person who hasn't seen it yet, or if you've never seen it, the next one is entitled The Telltale Heart.
true, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I'm mad? See how calmly, how precisely I can tell the story to you. Listen. It starts with the old man. An old man in an old house. A good man, I suppose. He had never harmed me. I didn't want his gold, if gold there was. Then what was it? I think it was his eye. Yes, that eye, the eye, that. His eye staring. Milky white film. The eye, everywhere, in everything. Of course, I had to get rid of the eye. So I waited, watched, waited. I was never so kind to the old man. I looked after him each minute, each second, and I waited. But night after night, in the hour of the slowest clock, I opened the old man's door. The eye was always closed. For 7 days I waited. You think me mad? What madman would wait, could wait so patiently, so long, in the old house, with the old man and the eye that... Then on the 8th night, I knew. Tonight. Still, I waited, while time slowed, stopped, ebbed out. A watch's hand moved more quickly than mine. Then... What? No! For an hour, I did not move a muscle. I could feel the earth turn. The eye. Hear the spider spinning. In the house, the grinding crumble of decay. Then, something else. Dull and muffled, yet... Of course. It was the beating of the old man's heart. He knew. So strong for such an old man. Louder then. And still louder. For all the world to hear and know. I had to stop it. Then it was over. The heart was still. The eye was dead. I was free. But there was still work to be done. I replaced the planks so cleverly, no eye, not even his, could have found anything wrong. Huh? So soon?
The neighbors reported a scream. We're obliged to investigate.
A scream? My own, gentleman. A childish dream. But come in, please. You'll want to look through the house.
That is our duty. Where is the old man?
Gone to the city.
You're up very early this morning.
The dream I spoke of, it awakened me.
When did he leave?
The old man? Yesterday.
How long will he be away?
2 weeks. Perhaps longer.
Nothing out of place here.
There is his bed. Here his cupboard. All in order.
Quite in order.
All quite in order.
Yes, nothing amiss. You understand that when a complaint is made, we have no choice but...
Stay, please. Such a wretched hour. I was making tea. A hot drink will break the chill. Surely it would surprise good people how much evil the night conceals from their eyes. But not yours, to be sure. What did you say, sir? Yes, of course, the hot water. It will do no harm to the bare boards. I'm a little less tidy with the old man away. Then I heard it. It might have been a hand, a clock. But no. Louder, and still louder. They must hear it. Yet they sit and talk and talk. They must. Of course they do. They know. They do. They're torturing me, watching me, letting it beat so that I... Stop it! Stop it, you devils! Yes, I did it. It's there, under the floor. Oh, stop it! It is the beating of his hideous heart! True, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I am mad?
What a wonderful adaptation of that. That was such a fun story and a great storytelling. Moving on, though, Frederick will be reciting the poem, The Bells. So let that ring around in your head for a little bit, and let's give it up for Frederick.
Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight from the molten golden notes, and all in tune. What a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells. How it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells. In the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, 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 out of tune. In a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor, now to sit or never by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, bells, bells! What a tale their terror tells of despair! How they clang and crash and roar! What a horror they are pour on the bosom of the palpitating air! Yet the ear it fully knows, by the twanging and the clanging of the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells, in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells. By the sinking or the swelling, in the anger of the bells, in the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monody compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan, and the people, they that dwell up in the steeple all alone, and who tolling
Tolling, tolling, in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart of stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls. And their king it is who tolls, and he tolls, rolls, rolls, rolls the paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances, and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme, to the paean of the bells, to the throbbing of the bells, to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in a happy runic rhyme, to the rolling of the bells, to the tolling of the bells, to the moaning and the groaning of the bells.
Ah, well done, my friend, well done. Let's give it up for Frederick again. What a great little poem. I love how it starts lighthearted and then just drops like a rock and brings you down to the bottom of the crypt again. What a wonderful job, and Poe is such a wonderful way of doing that to you. And speaking of Tales in the Crypt, up next is one of my favorite stories. This is a lot of fun to make. I've been wanting to do something with this for a while, but we finally have it, and here it is. This one is entitled Morella. So I hope you enjoy Morella.
With a feeling of deep yet most singular affection, I regarded my friend Morella. Thrown by accident into her society many years ago, my soul from our first meeting burned with fires it had never known before. But the fires were not of Eros, and bitter and tormenting to my spirit was the gradual conviction that I could in no manner define their unusual meaning or regulate their vague intensity. Yet we met, and fate bound us together at the altar, and I never spoke of passion nor thought of love. She, however, shunned society, and attaching herself to me alone rendered me happy. It is a happiness to wonder, it is a happiness to dream. Morella's erudition was profound. As I hoped to live, her talents were of no common order. Her powers of mind were gigantic. I felt this, and in many matters became her pupil. I soon, however, found that perhaps on account of her Presburg education, she placed before me a number of those mystical writings, which are usually considered the mere dross of the early German literature. These, for what reason I could not imagine, were her favourite and constant study. And that, in the process of time, they became my own, should be attributed to the simple but effectual influence of habit and example. In all this, if I err not, my reason had little to do. My convictions, or I forget myself, were in no manner acted upon by the ideal, nor was any tincture of the mysticism which I read to be discovered, unless I am greatly mistaken, either in my deeds or in my thoughts. Persuaded of this, I abandoned myself implicitly to the guidance of my wife, and entered with an unflinching heart into the intricacies of her studies. And then, When poring over forbidden pages, I felt a forbidden spirit enkindling with me. Would Morella place her cold hand upon my own, and rake up from the ashes of a dead philosophy some low singular words, whose strange meaning burned themselves in upon my memory? And then, hour after hour, would I linger by her side, and dwell upon the music of her voice, until at length its melody was tainted with terror, and there fell a shadow upon my soul, and I grew pale and shuddered inwardly at those two unearthly tones. And thus joy suddenly faded into horror, and the most beautiful became the most hideous, as Hinnom became Gehenna. It is unnecessary to state the exact character of these disquisitions, which, growing out of the volumes I have mentioned, formed for so long a time almost the sole conversation of Morella and myself. By the learned in what might be termed theological morality, they will be readily conceived, and by the unlearned they would, at all events, be little understood. The wild pantheism of Fichte, the modified palingenesis of the Pythagoreans, and above all the doctrines of identity, as urged by Schelling, were generally the points of discussion presenting the most of beauty to the imaginative Morella. That identity, which, Mr. Locke, is termed personal, I think truly defines to consist in the sameness of rational being. And since by person we understand an intelligent essence having reason, and since there is a consciousness which always accompanies thinking, it is which makes us all to be that which we call ourselves, thereby distinguishing us from other beings that think and giving us a personal identity. But the principum individuationis, the notion of that identity, which at death is or is not lost forever, was to me at all times a consideration of intense interest, not more from the perplexing and exciting nature of its consequences than from the marked and agitating manner in which Morella mentioned them. But indeed the time had now arrived when the mystery of my wife's manner oppressed me as a spell. I could no longer bear the touch of her worn fingers, nor the low tone of her musical language, nor the lustre of her melancholy eyes. And she knew all this, but did not upbraid. She seemed conscious of my weakness or my folly, and smiling called it fate. She seemed also conscious of a cause to me unknown for the gradual alienation of my regard, but she gave me no hint or token of its nature. Yet she was a woman and pined away daily. In time the crimson spots settled steadily upon the cheek, and the blue veins upon the pale forehead became prominent. And one instant my nature melted into pity, but in the next I met the glance of her meaning eyes, and then my soul sickened and became giddy with the giddiness of one who gazes downward into some dreary and unfathomable abyss. Shall I then say that I longed with an earnest and consuming desire for the moment of Morella's decease? I did, but the fragile spirit clung to its tenement of clay for many days, for many weeks and irksome months, until my tortured nerves obtained the mastery over my mind. And I grew furious through delay, and with the heart of a fiend cursed the days and the hours and the bitter moments, which seemed to lengthen and lengthen as our gentle life declined, like shadows in the dying of the day. But one autumnal evening, when the winds lay still in heaven, Morella called me to her bedside. There was a dim mist all over the earth, and a warm glow upon the waters, and amid the rich October leaves of the forest, a rainbow from the firmament had surely fallen. "It is a day of days," she said as I approached, "a day of all days either to live or die. It is a fair day for the sons of earth and life, more fair for the daughters of heaven and death." I kissed her forehead, and she continued, "I am dying, yet shall I live." Morella! "The days have never been when thou couldst love me, but her whom in life thou didst abhor, in death thou shalt adore." Morella! I repeat, I am dying, but within me is a pledge of that affection. Ah, how little which thou didst feel for me, Morella. And when my spirit depart shall the child live, thy child and mine, Morella's. But thy days shall be of sorrow, that sorrow which is the most lasting of impressions, as the cypress is the most enduring of trees. For the hours of thy happiness are over, and joy is not gathered twice in a life, as the roses have paced them twice in a year. Thou shalt no longer then play the tane with time, but being ignorant of the myrtle and the vine, thou shalt bear about with thee thy shroud upon the earth, as do the Muslimen at Mecca. Morella! I cried. Morella! How knowest thou this? But she turned away, her face upon the pillow, and a slight tremor coming over her limbs, she thus died, and I heard her voice no more. Yet, as she had foretold, her child, to which in dying she had given birth, which breathed not until the mother breathed no more, her child, her daughter, lived. And she grew strangely in stature and intellect, and was the perfect resemblance of her who had departed. And I loved her with a love more fervent than I believed it possible to feel for any denizen of the earth. But ere long the heaven of this pure affection became darkened, and gloom and horror and grief swept over it in clouds. I said the child grew strangely in stature and intelligence. Strange indeed was a rapid increase in bodily size, but terrible, oh terrible, were the tumultuous thoughts which crowded upon me while watching the development of a mental being. Could it be otherwise when I daily discovered in the conceptions of the child the adult powers and faculties of this woman? When the lessons of experience fell from the lips of infancy, and when the wisdom of the passions of maturity I found hourly gleaming from its full and speculative eye? When I say all this became evident to my appalled senses, when I could no longer hide it from my soul, nor throw it off from those perceptions which trembled to receive it, is it to be wondered at that suspicions of a nature fearful and exciting crept in upon my spirit, or that my thoughts fell back aghast upon the wild tales and thrilling theories of the entombed Morella? I snatched from the scrutiny of the world a being whom destiny compelled me to adore, and that in the rigorous seclusion of my home watched with an agonizing anxiety over all which concerned the beloved. And as years rolled away, and I gazed day after day upon her holy and mild and eloquent face, and pored over her maturing form, day after day did I discover new points of resemblance in the child to her mother, the melancholy and the dead. And hourly grew darker these shadows of similitude, and more full and more definite and more perplexing, and more hideously terrible in their aspect. For that smile was like her mother's I could bear, but then I shuddered at its too perfect identity. That her eyes were like Morella's I could endure, but they too often looked down into the depths of my soul with Morella's own intense and bewildering meaning. And in the contour of her high forehead, and in the ringlets of her silken hair, and in the wan fingers which buried themselves therein, and in the sad musical tones of her speech, and above all, oh above all, in the phrases and expressions of the dead on the lips of the loved and the living, I found food for consuming thought and horror, for a worm that would not die. Thus passed away 2 lustra of a life, and as yet my daughter remained nameless upon the earth. My child and my love were the designations usually prompted by a father's affection, and the rigid seclusion of her days precluded all other intercourse. Morella's name died with her at her death. Of the mother I had never spoken to the daughter. It was impossible to speak. Indeed, during the brief period of her existence, the latter had received no impressions from the outward world, save such as might have been afforded by the narrow limits of her privacy. But at length the ceremony of baptism presented to my mind, in its unnerved and agitated condition, a present deliverance from the terrors of my destiny. And at the baptismal font, I hesitated for a name, and many titles of the wise and beautiful, of old and modern times, of my own and foreign lands, came thronging to my lips, with many, many fair titles of the gentle and the happy and the good. What prompted me then to disturb the memory of the buried dead? What demon urged me to breathe that sound, which in its very recollection was wont to make ebb the purple blood in torrents from the temples to the heart? What fiend spoke from the recesses of my soul, when amid those dim aisles and in the silence of the night, I whispered within the ears of the holy man the syllables, Morella? What more than fiend convulsed the features of my child, and overspread them with hues of death, as starting at that scarcely audible sound, she turned her glassy eyes from the earth to heaven, and falling prostrate on the black slabs of our ancestral vault, responded, I am here. Distinct, coldly, calmly distinct, fell those few simple sounds within my ear, and thence, like molten lead, rolled hissingly into my brain. Years may pass away, but the memory of that epoch, never. Nor was I indeed ignorant of the flowers and the vine, but the hemlock and cypress overshadowed me night and day. And I kept no reckoning of time or place, and the stars of my fate faded from heaven, and therefore the earth grew dark, and its figures passed me by like flitting shadows, and among them all I beheld only Morella. The winds of the firmament breathed but one sound within my ears, and the ripples upon the sea murmured evermore, Morella. But she died, and with my own hands I bore her to the tomb, and I laughed with a long and bitter laugh as I found no traces of the first in the charnel where I laid the second, Morella.
Oh, what a wonderful story. It's like, again, I said it before, I will say it again. It's one of my favorite stories. Tale of supernatural and suspense. Love it, love it, love it. Such a fun story, and William did such a great job. So let's give it up for William Westwater tonight for his wonderful narrations. And I'd like to give a shout out to my brother and his partner, Krista. What's up? And I'd also like to thank my good friend Ferdinando Santoro for supplying us with some music for some of these wonderful tales, and of course our introduction. And another shout out to my wonderful friends in Spain, El Trastero de Lula, for making these wonderful puppets and for being such good friends. And I can't thank you all enough for being a part of this little adventure in theater with me. And of course I'd like to give a shout out to all of you, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope to see you again, and until next time, we'll see you on the other side.